How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Mezcal Buzz Experience, where we have really cool conversations while tasting different agave spirits with special guests. And today I have some really cool guests that we've been talking for quite some time now of getting this going. I have Pepe Martinez and Alejandra Flores, the founders of the LA Tequila Club, and we're going to learn everything about them, everything about the projects they're working on, and really cool stuff. So we're going to get started, right? Thank you guys for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Muchas gracias for having us here.
Cool. We're going to get started. We're going to taste 4 mezcales, and then we're going to mezcales, tequilas, agave spirits, right? I should make that clear. And let's get started, right? First off, I want to learn about the LA Tequila Club, how it got started, what's the mission behind it, and everything that you guys do. If you want to start off with that. As I pull out our first mezcal, and then I'll share what we have.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the space again. We really appreciate talking about agave anytime, especially on a lovely Friday night. I'm actually going to take us back to 5 years ago when our agave journey truly started with the Don Pepe agave experiences. It really started with Pepe's passion. At the time, we were both in tech consulting, and all he talked about in the first year that we were dating was about tequila, literally. And so it got to the point that, you know, me being so into fitness and health and wellness, I really questioned what the motive was behind the interest. And really it was because I am not the biggest advocate of binge drinking, but, and so I had the wrong perception of agave and really I had no idea really how to sip agave and tequila, which is why I had that perception, right? When he started to talk all about agave, he started talking about pursuing education and wanting to become a catador. And when looking for educational opportunities, everybody was telling him that he had to become a sommelier in order to represent, in order to speak, to get credibility, and start an agave journey. When he started that program, he realized there was no curriculum around agave. So it made no sense to pursue that when really all he wanted to learn was about agave. And so our roots in this industry are grounded in education. That's the first and foremost, our number one pillar, and how everything really started. When he kept talking about it, and so for his birthday party, I actually threw a surprise birthday party, and I had all of his friends bring one tequila expression. I sent an email, calendar invite with, here are the 5 expressions, that's all I really knew, and I essentially organized a surprise cata, his first surprise cata, which was his first tasting. And I essentially, as everybody came in, they brought in a bottle. He was really weirded out. And I had an iPad prepared with essentially pictures of the process in very basic form. And I told him, surprise, this is your birthday party. It's also your first cata. If you love to teach and talk about it, then we turn it into an experience. And if you hate it and, you know, all you want to do is focus on learning, then we focus on that. It was a very long cata, very fun birthday party, and that essentially is what kicked off us turning the education into an actual business. And so I had already been doing experiences in tech, creating experiences in tech through various different technologies, and so I essentially just used that to shape what tasting experiences are today. I'm such a firm believer that the best way to learn is by teaching. And so I essentially wanted to make sure we had that opportunity. There's a lot of things that unfolded and that I learned about myself in the journey. And same with Pepe, and I'll let him speak to the education piece and how we crafted the presentations and the educational portion. But that's really how it started.
So 2 things. I love the initiative you took to help push Pepe into that. So 2 things I want to hear. So we'll hear from Pepe now, like your side, because it seems like you already had the agave interest and experience with it leading to that moment. So if you want to tell us a bit about that, but let's go ahead and taste this. We're tasting a mezcal from Honor y Amor, a very special project to me that I like to share whenever possible. And we're tasting the Chupa Rosa, which you commented on one of the ones below the post that you wanted to taste. So I definitely want to share the Chupa Rosa. Thank you.
Saludcita, thank you. I've been loving your series.
Thank you. Thank you. I enjoy it.
Yeah, really tasty. Yeah, so going back to that birthday party, it was definitely a surprise for me. We were living back in Seattle back in the day, and most of our friends over there were not Latino, so they were other ethnicities, and we usually were the ones that brought a tequila bottle. So then we invited roughly 40, 50 people to this party, and everyone started showing
That's big. That's a nice one.
They're cousins.
the cousin, it's a familia. They start showing up with tequila bottles, and I'm like, okay, this is kind of weird. 10, 20, 30, 40. I think we got close to 60 tequila bottles, and I was like, okay, this is definitely shady. And that's when she brought yeah, I bought it and everything. I was like, okay. And we basically had a cata for like 3 or maybe 4 hours. We had an amazing time. We didn't get to all the 60 bottles, but definitely that's why I saw the opportunity of seeing myself along with her, of teaching other people about our culture, right? If you knew me before 2018, 2019, it was always Pepe and his tequila bottle, because I was proud of showing where I'm coming from. I moved to the U.S. That was the best way to make friends, bringing a tequila. Everyone smiles right away. So that was the opportunity, right? Also work, they call me Don Pepe, because I was just speaking about doing concerts with tequila. It was just something that was embedded on my persona. And yeah, we just got that opportunity, and now here we are 6 years later, and we have been really involved in the industry in many aspects.
What did you guys do then next, as far as you saw I'll say the success or that first event that you said 50 people is a lot of people, and that's to start. What was your next step? Like, what you mentioned, there was not a lot of programs or to be sommelier at that time. What was your next step?
Yeah, so I definitely started looking into, like she mentioned, these educational programs. Being in Seattle, that region is known for their wine, so I was like, okay, let me enroll in this kind of education here. Did a couple courses, but then I didn't find that attraction or that motivation that I had with tequila, or that like fandom. And then that's when I started looking more towards Mexico, right? Even though I'm super far away. Back then, you don't have any of the academies or schools that you see nowadays. So it was kind of difficult. There was only one place or school that I was able to find, which is La Academia de Catadores de Vino y Mezcal, run by older people, so they were not really tech savvy. Didn't have anything virtual. This is a transition in 2020 that everything's going virtual, so there was a lot of things happening. And basically, my only option for educating myself was either internet or books. But then, like I mentioned, there was not a lot of information out there, so I had to start with some whiskey and then some wine, and then eventually, in that aspect, it was learning about the aromas and flavors, the chemical compounds, how everything gets formed in order to develop something. Because that's the base, the roots of what you taste, right? And then eventually got connected with other entities, other brands that were offering education for bartenders. And that's how I started like getting my way into getting invited to these events and virtual meetings. Eventually, 3-4 years later, I was able to apply to the University Autónoma de Guadalajara to get my degree as a técnico tequilero. So that was a step beyond just going from passion or hobby into something more serious. And that was like my stepping stone into, okay, getting known in the industry with all these people that you've probably seen on social media. They really valued my passion or my initial interest to learn more, and they give me opportunity, right? Because you got to apply to either a distillery or one of these brands that were established. So I spoke to Maestro Sergio Cruz. I was like, hey, you know me from the last 3-4 years. I really want to take a step further in my education. He's like, yeah, I'll write you a letter. I'll tell the CRT, I'll tell the university that you really want to do this. And that's how I got accepted into it.
And that's fantastic. What's that program like, and what does it mean to go through that, complete it, and how does that make you who you are?
Yeah, it's definitely, if I'm not mistaken, 9 to 10 months of meeting every week with other people in the industry. Most of them are like production managers, chemists, a little bit of sales in there. It's just people that want to get more educated in the topic. But it's definitely a program that I want to say it's about 60% chemistry or chemical engineering in a way, 20% or 25% about production, which is a little of my background from school, and then another 10 to 15 about marketing and sales. So this is a really complete program that just gives you like some tools to become more knowledgeable, to teach, or just to get more immersed in the industry.
And it, go ahead.
No, I think it's important to add to that by the time he got to Sergio Cruz, he had already been working with brands to help develop profiles. So he was ultimately already doing the work with master distillers, maestros tequileros, maestros mezcaleros, a lot of brand owners asking for the advice, how should I create my profile of the samples, of the options, where should we go, what are the trends from aromas, characteristics. And so they're really leaning on him as a catador for his palate and for his skill set. He's also an industrial engineer, so he has both backgrounds on process even prior to Agave. And then I think focusing further on actually developing your palate through the experiences made a huge contribution to like the credibility that you got.
I'm also a foodie, so I love flavors, eating, and
how you support those
and
brands.
So.
Yeah, and so by the time he got into the CR, it was ultimately like when he asked Sergio Cruz, what can I do to further get involved in the development process, really start getting my hands dirty in the production process and do more? He said, well, you need to become a técnico tequilero at the bare minimum.
At the bare, yeah. Yeah, in that same program, Chava Rosales from Cascawen is also a teacher there. So he also granted some support because he has also been, he's been my growth the last 5 to 6 years. He has seen that. So that was another person that I knew already in the program that was like, hey, like you should do this. So that really got me more motivated to do this.
That's fascinating. And it's fascinating because I like to see the structure and not the hierarchy, but just the structure and the formality of like a program like this, of the title of técnico, and how that has helped you in creating tequilas, creating profiles, helping with brands. But then the other part on the education, and how does that translate into now what is the LA Tequila Club, and how does that apply? I'm going to go ahead and introduce the next spirit really quick before we talk about the next topic, because it's a great one. We have some expressions that you have brought to share. I think, which one do you think would be a great one to lead into this next
I think
topic?
we should go with, let's go with Caballito Cerrado. Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Let's do that. And tell us about this.
Yeah, so Caballito Cerrado was, or the family that produced this agave spirit, no longer tequila. It's one of the main families that started this industry, right? We're talking a couple hundred years ago. If I'm not mistaken, sorry for that. These families were part of the Herradura family, or the brand back then. And eventually, after some, I guess, industry disagreements, they decided to part ways. Created the brand Caballito Cerrado, which basically it's like a contrast of Herradura, which is having a domesticated horse. Caballito Cerrado is like a wild horse. So basically, they decided not to do tequila anymore. That's why it's agave spirit, that they still wanted to have that essence, that opportunity to still be creating new brands out there. And they allowed us to work with them 2 years ago. I was like, hey, Javier, that's one of the owners, I want to do something special with the club. We'll talk more about the club here. But he basically just let me do, in quote, whatever we wanted for the club. So this is the first reposado cask strength that Caballito Cerrado has ever released. And we were fortunate to have this for us. So I'm going to pour a little bit for you guys.
Excellent. That's a great lead into the next kind of question I have. And we'll talk more about LA Tequila Club as well, and will continue to. What do you think is one of the biggest differentiators of, besides, production methods and processes of tequila and the other agave spirits and mezcal, for example? What do you think that? Because, for example, right now you're saying it's not producing a tequila. It's an agave spirit. Let's tell the audience a little bit of why that is and how it's
So basically it is considered an agave spirit because they decided to remove themselves from the CRT, which is the council that regulates any tequila production, again because of some disagreements. But then they still want to be part of the industry somehow, and that's why they continue to create this brand. But as far as the production method for this brand, they still follow a typical tequila production. They still have a beautiful distillery. They also have their own water source, which contributes a lot to the flavor of this unique brand here. But going back to a question about the differences, I think it relies a lot on the tradition from every single area, the culture heritage that they might have from their environment, and then also the innovation they want to do. Regardless if they've done that innovation many years ago, it's still part of their history, right? So going back to mezcal, it is something that you have to incorporate in some way or another, whether it's rustic or more industrialized. It's all about the story, the essence that they have.
Mm-hmm. And this one in particular, can you tell us a bit about the process or what?
Yeah. So this one's we're using Agave Azul, what we use for tequila. So when we were talking about what should we do, I really didn't want to do something that was already in the market. I threw in a lot of different options where he was like, we're not doing that. That's too crazy from us to release that. And I was like, what about a reposado castring? I haven't seen that you've done that in the past. But I really want to choose the barrel, right? I want to really get into selecting whatever you tell me that I can do. I'll push your boundaries and see what we can choose. So he was like, I have something special. This is coming from barrel number 9, which is one of their family favorite barrels. So anything that they feel that is special or unique, they put it in that barrel. And I was like, if you allow me to do that, let's go with that.
And do you mean for like I kind of don't know is so barrel number 9? It's a barrel that it's been selected and it keeps getting.
It's been in their families for a couple of generations. I'm unsure of how many, but that's basically the barrel that they choose just to put like the best of like creme of their production and just put it there for family purposes or a special release now. But it's basically how he described it was like, this is the barrel that we use just to put that final touch before it goes out.
Awesome.
But it's been there for many years.
Can you pour a little bit for Jack over here?
And I think it would be important to highlight why or what the importance or the relevance of a super mega used barrel, right, is the characteristics are going to come through much faster in a very potent way rather than if it were to be a brand new barrel, correct? And so that essentially, it's not just tradition, right, and being able to be part of a family tradition, but also that those flavors from previous profiles are also part of.
Yeah, I mean, there's.
Can you before you do that, can you describe what we're smelling and like, because it smelled so different to me. I like when I smell something that I haven't before. You know what I mean? There's certain aromas and tastes that way. This was like very wonderful. Yeah.
So one of the key things that I realized when I was choosing this along with Ale and the club is definitely a funky agave profile, right? When we say funky, a lot of people will say, oh, it smells like fee, or it smells like cheese or lactic, or use crazy words. But in this sense, the funkiness, it's a lot of incorporating a lot of chemical compounds and factors that just attribute to something that we're not used to, or something that is so friendly or sweetie or in that sense. So it's perceived as something negative, but it's definitely just something that's more unique. In addition to that, you're gonna have your typical nuances of like a barrel influence, which is gonna be like vanilla, a little bit caramel, and oaks or spices. They're gonna be really subtle. They're not potent. They're not screaming like it's barrel here, but you're gonna notice it more on the taste. As far as the what we call rancio, which is the mustiness or that vintage flavor, that's also really noticeable in both the aroma and the flavor. And rancio also has a negative perception, but it's basically just saying something that's been there too long. It's a word that is usually or mostly used in the cognac, armagnac world, just to get something that has been there for ages. So I think those are the main key differentiators or factors that make this profile really unique. And then also there's a touch of minerality in there, which comes from their own spring source. And that's like really what really made me crave this.
Would you say that I'm off by when I smelt this? I smell almost like cayenne pepper or like dry meats, almost like a pepperoni or something.
Okay.
Like very dry.
There is definitely a umami factor to this one too. Also, it's also salty a little bit towards the end. And that's what I just love. It was something unique, something that I was like, I've never found this profile on their line or any other spirit, especially tequila. You can find it in mezcal, but not in tequila. And I was like, this is something that I think the club will appreciate to have.
Yeah, and the spices really come in the flavor as well.
If you notice, they're not so potent, but they're just harmonious on how they work along each other.
Yeah, a beautiful spirit. I haven't tasted something like this. I'm glad you brought that to share. What other aspects do you think differentiate tequila specifically? And I say that because one thing you mentioned earlier, which I thought was great, is like you mentioned innovation and the different experimentation that you did right now with in this batch and like trying different things. And I ask because I find that in the world of mezcal, for example, everything's like tied to heritage, tradition, those methods that just remain the same, like empirical knowledge that keeps passing, and the innovation is not as forward as like the tequila side is. Why do you think that is, or how does that separate them?
I think it's a lot of the cultural acceptance on maybe a lot of these communities or maestros mezcaleros incorporating external ideas, right? But when I refer to innovation, it can also be applied to this like rustic processes, right? For example, when we go to the Filipino Olympic sale, right? The innovation that was incorporated in Oaxaca and all these regions was adding an external cooling system, right? Something that was not used maybe in the Philippines or when they brought it in. But that's what I mean by innovation, that there's always people that are trying to make it better. Maybe because they didn't have maybe the tools or resources to initially do something really good. And they just, como how we say in Mexico, el ingenio mexicano somehow came to them. And that now becomes part of their heritage or their culture, and it's going to get passed on to the next comes, right? So that's what my innovation, not more like the using machines and that kind of stuff. Is just incorporating your imagination to make something work and do something new, right? Eventually becomes cultural heritage, but then that's what I meant by innovation.
Sure. And what would you say is traditional tequila then? Or for example, when someone says like it's tequila is made in the traditional way, do you think there's one set answer or because I want to learn more about the tequila world, and that's why I think you're a great person to have on and pick these questions. But just for me to understand, like, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a really debatable topic about what artisanal or traditional tequila can be. I think as an industry, we're still trying to understand the roots somehow and apply it to the current market, right? If you ask me what a traditional tequila is, for me, it's going to be doing it the way, for example, that Siembra Ancestral does it, but it resembles a lot of the mezcal production process, right? So can we achieve a artisanal tequila right now? Yes and no, because there's a lot of concepts that also come from other spirits, right? Like mezcal and sotol, bacanora, raicilla. But then I think in today's world or current market, it is going to be applying a brick oven, a taona for extraction, fermentation tanks, whether it's cement or wood, and then using copper pot stills. I think those four will define it artisanal tequila right now. But if you put it to perspective to other processes, they're pretty industrialized in a way. But for me, that would be the definition of artisanal tequila.
And I think one thing that tequila kind of carries on its back is that, you know, from the inception of the agave spirits in Mesoamerica, when they started to happen, I think tequila kind of came from innovation and industrialization, right? If like the artisanal process and method that you just described, I would agree. I would say that's the artisanal process. But I think one thing at the core of tequila is innovation and industrialization. I think when people hear industrial and industrialization, it has a connotation to it, especially when you're thinking of like artisanal processes and things like that. But it's always been to make something better or more efficient or clean or something. But I think from what I see and what I tasted, even right now, and for example, tequila being made from one type of agave, how do you differentiate or how do you stand out in something like that in a process that's kind of the same around? It's like these little touches or these little experimentations that I think help set it apart. I guess a question I have from that is, what about yeast? How does yeast play?
Yeah, I was going to touch on that next. I think a lot of the new differentiation, like you mentioned, comes a lot from the fermentation and distillation processes, but more specifically on the fermentation. I think that's where you, as a maestro tequilero or someone that is developing a profile, the fermentation process allows you to pre-formulate what's going to be getting out after the distillation process. What I mean by that is like just by the yeast selection, whether you will go with something that's going to be wild at the beginning, you got to consider all the factors that surround your distillery. For example, NOM 1414 is surrounded by citrus trees, right? Think about lemon, lime, mandarin, orange. So a lot of their profiles have that embedded. It's like their fingerprint, which is also recognized as something that it's bitter, because citrus, in a way, it's bitter, right? There's other distilleries that have fruity trees around them. So then their profile is going to develop some of those things as well. But then if you choose to have a proprietary yeast, whether it's champagne, rum, or bread, or any other that you choose, you're already kind of put in a square. This is going to be the flavor profile that I'm looking for, right? So that's where a lot of the innovation is going to come, pre-innovation is going to come, whether you want to say, I want my profile to taste something like this. And then eventually in the distillation, that's when a lot of the refinement is going to happen. And that's all the chemical compounds come in play, and you can tweak it a little bit more. Then also there's other factors like the dilution, what kind of water you're using, how fast you're diluting. That's another factor. If you dilute it too fast, it can be taste like soap. It's called saponification, or so, I'm not sure in English, but also the taste of soap because you dilute it too fast. And those are the things that you got to consider when you're trying to come up with something new. But then also the factor of where the agave is coming from. There's like so many things that will come in place, but those two main stages or processes are the ones that are going to pre-formulate how your tequila is going to taste.
Cool. And leading in from that, let's step to the next spirit we'll taste. And from that conversation, Pepe, what do you think would be a great fit to go with next?
I mean, since we're talking about tradition and processes, I think sotol. Let's go with sotol for now.
All right.
Sotolito.
And as you, I'll let you do us the honors of pouring. Ale, how has your experience been
Love that.
in this whole process? Like, how am I thinking? Like, how have you appreciated learning, and then taking that as like fuel to like keep going forward? And especially with like your background, I know we've talked about your background in media and stuff. I think we'll touch that on another topic too in a second. Is you guys do a great job at sharing and educating and doing these things. How has your journey been in this?
Thank you so much for asking that. My journey has been interesting, right? I stumbled upon this passion. I always say that I inherited this passion through my experience, right? It's been a beautiful journey, to say the least. I've been lucky enough to be able to apply, what I love to do, which is help people just understand what their problems are, come up with solutions. And that's really where my intention was at the beginning, is why don't we know this information? The more that I learned from him and all of the certifications together, I actually took some of the certifications up front because I felt I needed to understand everything that was happening before shaping an experience. In all of my jobs and in being a consultant previously in technology, it was ramping up, getting to understand what the industry was, our clients, bringing them together, understanding their problems, and then proposing solutions that were shaped into some sort of experience to either introduce a new product, deepen the fandom with an existing product, etc., right? And that's now what I do in entertainment as well within streaming. Applying that same model into Agave, the more that I learned, the more that it was like falling in love with what I was learning. And for me, it was about identifying parts of myself that I had never had the experience to get in touch with. I was born in Culiacan, Sinaloa, moved when I was 8 years old to Seattle, Washington, predominantly, Caucasian neighborhood. And so oftentimes while I was someone who was very proud to be Mexican, I was not always as in touch with my roots just from location-wise. Of course, I've always kept in touch with my family all the time, my cousins, everything. And for me, it just became a self-discovery journey. And in that self-discovery journey, not only did our relationship grow, but my relationship with Mexico grew. And it gives me chills just talking about it, because it's just been such a grind. And so for me, when I started learning, I was like, I want everybody to get this information. How can we get this information? And why have I never seen this information on billboards and, what we're starting to see today? When we started researching people in the industry and when we started talking directly with producers so that we could get the product for tastings, I'm sure you can think of some of the obstacles, right? At the time, there wasn't even Tequila Ocho in Washington at the time, right? There was barely Fortaleza coming in, right? And so in talking to the producers, I thought, okay, if I'm tasting your product, can I just take 30 minutes of your time so that we can introduce you via social media? Since most of our engagements were private, we wanted to find a way to also spread and share the education that we were obtaining to inspire and to connect with others, more importantly. And that's how we found many of the people that we admire today, that we've collaborated with. And that's actually how we found a lot of the people that helped found the LA Tequila Club community. And so for me, it's been a very ambiguous journey because it was never my intention, but I'm super proud of what we've created and everything that I've learned. And now I'm a certified catadora. What people don't know, right? Most of the time behind the scenes, but I sat next to his Técnico Tequilero program, right? Like I was literally like a little plague right next to him, La Plaga, trying to learn and grasp onto as much as I could. Something that I realized along the way was that the reason why I started wasn't to become the catadora. From the very beginning, it's always been Pepe is going to be the face of the brands. And the reason for that is because that's where I can contribute most, is on strategy, business, how can we maximize value for the brands in everything that we're doing, while also shaping the experience for the end consumer. And that's where I've continued to have to push myself to continue focusing on, and not get distracted by the passion that I have today of agave spirits and tequila, right? It's almost like stay in your lane to maximize the experience for everyone.
That's fantastic. I wanted salud to that. We're tasting the sotol right now. I'll give you a chance to tell us about it, but that was beautifully said. Salud.
Thank
It
you.
reminds me of the episode we did with Salvadores. He said in that episode, behind every good man is a good woman. He said, no, it's not like that, though. He said, next to every good man.
Yes.
And you guys it's a
Yes.
great team that you guys are doing here. So that's fantastic. Salud
Thank
again
you.
to that.
Good for that.
She's basically the reason that we got into this. So
Yeah, from that surprise party that you had. Cool. What are we having here? The sotol.
yeah, so Sotol is another Mexican spirit from northern Mexico. Doesn't come from an agave. It looks like an agave. At some point, it was actually under the same category, but it's its own thing. It's actually coming from the asparagus family, so it's closely related to that. So I grew up in Chihuahua, Ciudad Juarez specifically, and Sotol is the main spirit that we consume over there. Not many people know about it, but it is something that it's just embedded in our culture. And we're sipping here in Casa Médanos. It is a local brand to Ciudad Juarez, and basically it's named after the Samalayuca Médanos, which is a special place in Mexico that resembles the dunes, something like you see in Africa, like the Sahara Desert. We have that same, but obviously in a smaller version. In Chihuahua, and it's in a protected area, so that's why the name comes from. But basically here they're using Dactylidium willii, which is the actual scientific name of sotol, or sereke. It's another word that they use to describe this plant. And it's a really resilient plant that grows in the desert, takes anywhere between 15 to 18 years to be mature enough to be used for sotol. Sotol basically is a spirit that you probably have not heard about because it was in the shadows for so many years. It was illegal to produce this until 1994. That's when they allowed to do it. Then eventually they receive a denomination of origin. But it is something that it comes from where I grew up. When I'm homesick, this is something that I grab because it just takes me back there. If you notice, one of the main aroma notes here is the petrichor. And it comes in a sense of like it's really fresh cucumber notes in there. You get a little bit of whetstone, some dirt, earthy notes in there. And that's basically how my hometown smells like. It's a desert, but then if you put it in a copita, it's even better. So yeah, that's basically a quick summary of what sotol is.
It's fantastic. You described those aromas perfectly, and even on the mouthfeel, it's very, I'll say soft. It's silky. It doesn't have that picor like some of the other spirits, and I get some anise flavors in that too. It's very great tasting.
And it's something that you would not expect from a desertic plant at all. So it's something that I'm still trying to push people to try. There's people that are like, what is that? I don't want to try it. But I think it's one of those upcoming trend spirits coming up. So eventually more people here in California will have the chance to try it.
And what do you think about, that's actually a great point, especially now that a few years back, I don't know, 2, maybe 3, and help me out if I'm wrong here, is the category of agave spirits that is now open for importing spirits, right? So we're seeing a lot of sotoles now, raicillas in the States, fantastic other spirits, and other places around the world now that we see are having spirits. So at the same time that we see people are going to be more exposed to or learn about, like, say, hey, sotol, but I don't know, like, are we going to see other spirits still coming in shadow, do you think? Do you think there's a risk there? How do you feel about that?
I don't see a decline just yet. Right now, Mexico está de moda, how they say that. People want to keep learning. That's another thing. Right now, people having access to social media and many other tools, they want to keep learning. And I think we're in a really special time to educate folks about not only tequila, but Mexican spirits and our culture. And that's another thing that we really appreciate and gives us more momentum to keep doing this.
What I also noticed and what we've learned through the LA Tequila Club community, you included, right, are the palates have developed so much even in the last 2 years that we've been together as a community present in LA. Because some of us, what we've learned is that we're part of the Don Pepe Agave Experience familia. We realized they were in LA, and that's part of the story that we'll get into. But what we've seen that's been really fascinating the last 2 years is how quickly folks' palates have developed. And they ask for more. They want to learn more. They want to be challenged. They want to try something else so that they can further understand the spirit that they get accustomed to.
And how would you describe the palate has developed? When you say that, what does that mean for the consumer that's listening?
Yeah, totally. So when we talk about developing your palate, you think about your comfort zone is going to be in what you know, and typically is what you eat. What you eat is typically what you're going to perceive in a distillate right away once you get past, right, the alcohol. And so that's essentially what's most familiar, or a memory. If you were in your grandma's house a lot, and that is a nostalgic memory that you have, and you have an extrañejo that smells, that leather, that buttery wood. They're going to unlock that memory. And so that's the first thing that's like first level palate, and essentially what you can perceive in aromas as well. And then as you continue to try different things and tolerate and build that tolerance and get to know new flavors, you start to expand your palate and what you can tolerate, what you like, right? You start to learn, I like this. And then the aroma wheel is super helpful because it helps you pinpoint some of the things that you may be perceiving, but maybe you're not as familiar with. And then from there, right, as people become more confident, we've seen that they've now have desires to say, hey, I want to try something that maybe I'm not going to understand. It's going to be really confusing, but I'm ready for that next step. I went through that journey where I actually didn't start with tequila. I actually started with mezcal because I love to cook. And for me, my spice rack was the starting point. And I found a lot of the spices in my spice rack in mezcal. But when I started learning about mezcal and how many agaves there are, I was like, I'm so scared. And so then I was like, let me pivot to tequila. Tequila, at least it's just learning different processes, but you keep one thing the same, which is the agave. So for me, it felt more inviting. I felt I could lean into that with a lot more confidence. And now I'm back into exploring mezcal a little more.
Yeah, and more in all the agave spirits there are, right? Yeah. And with that being said, let's step into the next one. If you guys could tell us about what we have here to taste. We kind of mixed the glasses up a little bit, but these are my ones that I've tasted. This is my clean one.
My last. Yep.
As you pour this and tell us about what we're gonna taste, let's talk more about now the LA Tequila Club and the program, what we could expect more from the Don Pepe experiences, and then we'll touch into the Cascanes experience. But what I don't think we explained quite yet, like for those watching and who might not be familiar, what the LA Tequila Club experience is. How do you become a part of it? And then I want to talk about what you guys have coming up in this near future as well.
Yeah. So to go back to the question of how the LA Tequila Club originated, right? Like we started with the story on Don Pepe. When I got a job here out in LA and we decided that we were going to make the move out here, we wanted to join a club. When folks from the Don Pepe Agave Experience community found out that we were in person somewhere, they said, let's meet up. And we were so excited to get to that. Those were our first friends. That was the first people that said, welcome to LA, was our agave community. We posted agave brunch, 45 people showed up. And then from there, folks said, we want to do this consistently. can we pay you to do this experience for us? Because we don't want to bring the food. We don't want to do the planning, right? And before it was all community, it was potluck style, right? And also came with the business responsibility aspect, right? When you do things right, you can open up a lot more business opportunities. And so that's what it evolved into. It was, how can we make sure that we are not just helping, promoting education, but also activating sales and activating product turnover, and people know where to find the product online and in person. The LA Tequila Club has allowed us to dive deeper into that side, and that's how the LA Tequila Club was created ultimately.
Fascinating. What is so what's the structure of the LA Tequila Club? What does it mean for somebody to be a member? How do they become a member, and what are the perks, or what does somebody get for being?
Yeah. So after a year, we created a membership model. And it was mainly, there's a free membership, right, for all the newcomers, people who want to start their agave journey. And all you have to do is go to latequilaclub.com and join the community that way via your email. After a certain number of events, you then get invited to join an Instagram group chat where we keep all of the community conversations. We talk about all things tequila, agave, events.
Yeah, news, debates, industry insights, new bottles,
day
releases, and cheese.
The whole 9 yards. And then we have our paid memberships. There are 2 different levels, and ultimately what that does is more for aficionados, folks who want to be part of the barrel picking program. So that aficionado group is the one who comes, we blind taste, they give us their perspective, we together choose the barrel picks. They also get percentage off at our liquor store partners. We have a network that allows us to, one, support those mom and pop shops and liquor stores who want to open up real estate in the artisanal, in the agave products. What they want to open up real estate for agave products and Mexican spirits now too. We can touch on that. And then we're adding now partners even in Mexico. We're adding El Búho because we are aficionados, right? We have tours also. We go to Mexico twice a year. And so we wanted to make sure that we can help support those brands, because some of the brands who typically were only distributing and selling in the US are now selling in Mexico too. So we also want to be part of that transition that some of the brands are making. What's coming next is exciting, because we just talked about how everyone's palates are evolving, right? And they're trying to find ways to challenge themselves. And so we believe that integrating agave spirits, more education around Mexican spirits, integrating more education about Mexican spirits into our program is something that you're going to see as part of 2025. And also partnering up with different organizations to bring more value to those behind the product, right, who are on the business side. And so we're working on a membership that is structured for that, so that we can promote education and entrepreneurship in spirits, bring more opportunities to open accounts, activate sales, learn whatever you need to do to optimize your business. And then other partnerships, right? At the end of the day, we are an LA community, and being mindful of what happened starting in January, we want to partner so that we are supporting the rebuild of LA throughout the entire year and however long it takes. And so we've made some modifications to make sure that we are also partnering with local restaurants, and we can continue to help rebuild LA after the fires.
That's dope. That's dope, you guys. I love to hear that. Can you tell us a bit about the what we're tasting?
Well, I think I want to send it to Ale on this one after the tasting notes, because she just came from a really amazing trip. But yeah, definitely we're tasting here Cascana Reposado number 7. Number 7 is basically the recipe number they gave to this formula, and this is going to be a 40%. This is a reposado that is really subtle to drink. It has your basic components of the bear influence. We're talking about that caramel, that vanilla essence, a little touches of spice, but then also maintains that cooked agave flavor, right? It's not lost as some other profiles that you're probably going to be more barrel influenced. This one still maintains that. And then the finish is something that it's really long. Like it really permeates your mouth, keeps you salivating, makes you think, I now want another sip, right? So that's one thing that this brand has done really well. Also, along with its marketing and bottle presentation story, but definitely they have focused a lot on the quality of making such a good product, and I really admire how they've done things. I've seen them grow since 2020. It's been it's a bit small brand now to they're becoming a medium-sized or even larger brand out there, but it really focused on making sure that every product they put out there, it's fantastic. So those are the things that I'm perceiving with this one.
Yeah, Cascanes is very intentional, and they have an incredible team from master distillers to a master blender. So a key part of their story is one of the brother-in-laws of one of the owners. He's in the wine world, and so from the very beginning, they've been very intentional about every piece of the process, from the agave, the water source. And they were actually one of the first brands that we learned about the importance of master blenders in the process. They were one of the first ones who started talking about it since before most folks were asking or really understanding. And so from start to finish, they've always stayed true to their brand and have always been very intentional.
Fantastic. One of the things you mentioned is that they do really well with their branding and that they've grown a lot since you've seen them. You were going to send to Alejandra right now as well about a really cool trip that happened recently. If you guys are following along on Instagram, which I'm sure you are, and you're seeing the stories and things, I had FOMO, or I was like, how do you get involved in that? I wanted to be there. That looked so cool. How was that?
It was a magical experience. It was my first brand trip. It was, like I said, most of the time I'm behind the scenes. Pepe gets to go to all the trips, which is awesome, and I think totally okay and totally fair. It honestly hasn't been until this year where I've really thought about wanting to get connected and stay connected to those that I meet throughout the industry. I think social media is very powerful. I think bandwidth-wise, it was just not my focus area for the last 2 years. I think now that we are expanding and we're a little bit more settled, I can go, into that. And so a little bit more, and that's my goal in this year. But the trip was incredible. I left my heart in Osto, which is the town where they get their water source. For me to be able to see their water source for the first time after so many years of talking about the brand, unless you came to one of our in-person experiences, you don't see me as a catadora, right? So for me to be able to connect with those who are just starting their agave journey, get to explore Mexico with them, get to explore the heart and the core of where this brand was born was truly, truly magical. And then also, right, to see like Edwin, JP, and Jose as they've evolved throughout this journey. And this is the first time they actually, part of the trip was to, they brought along their new sales team. So now they've grown from 3 people to a larger company, and now they have a sales team, which makes me very, very excited because everybody deserves to try Cascanes. And that type of growth really energizes me for them. And for them to take their entire new sales team to the town, educate them, focus, like some of them, they hadn't even started their first day with Cascanes, and they made sure that they understood the origin of the story. I thought that was so powerful. And I think that's going to go a long way in how they introduce not just Cascanes, but maybe the artisanal category within tequila to the masses.
That's awesome. And yeah, because, okay, so they had salespeople. I saw a ton of people. How many? There's like journalists, other groups.
Yes. So there was so many talent. That was another part. Meeting such talented photographers, journalists, people who, do all sorts of creative who just dive deeper into their passions was really motivating. And to see how fearless they are to step into, like I oftentimes feel like I'm not going to speak because I don't know enough, or just being surrounded by aficionados oftentimes can be kind of discouraging to speak up. And for them to look at you as, or, to the experts of like, yeah, teach me everything from 101 and connecting with people who understand other spirits so deeply. I loved connecting with those people. I talked about rum, I talked about gin, I taught, there's so many other things that I got to learn from. And that only all came back to like tequila education and how that all evolves into how we understand the distillate and the story, and how it all ties together. The other incredible part of this journey was going to Don Humberto's. So that is where they found their original recipe. And unfortunately, because of the location at the time, they couldn't produce there. But that's where they found their original recipe, and that's essentially what they took to then replicate at their previous distillery. And getting to meet him was just before I had only met Don Chico, who's their master distiller today, maestro tequilero today. And for me to meet Don Humberto, it was like came full circle. It was so magical. I met his kid, his wife, and the other beautiful, I think the other highlight why I say I left my heart in Osto. Osto, again, Jose, one of the founders, is from there. And getting to see the town, not just the water source, like the entire town, hicieron un recibimiento, which means like everybody from the town welcomes you. They literally, all 60 people, they were lined up in horses, had botanas, confetti, everybody's hugging Jose. Like you can clearly see how much they give to the town, and that's not part of their marketing. They don't talk about that. They don't put that on their website. We had a rodeo, banda all day. I literally danced all day, like all day. It was magical. And sipping on number 7, number 9, because number 9 is my favorite. A blanco, if I had to be specific. It was amazing. It was magical. So it was just like the people, the origin, the self-discovery. Again, going back into self-discovery, right? It was my first trip alone in the agave world. And then to experience it with so many incredible people was just truly inspiring. And then just seeing the growth of the brand, like magical.
That's awesome.
You gotta come, my friend.
I hope so. I'm telling you, like I was watching the stuff and I was like,
I know.
I want to go to.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody felt the same who was watching and wasn't there. Like that was. Any advice to people who are watching or other people that are getting into this world, how to get not just to be like, I want to go on a trip like that, which I'm sure everybody wants to, but how to be a contributor, right?
Yeah.
What could somebody do to contribute, be seen, to partake in that? And with that, if you could also talk about what's more to come with your guys' things that are happening. Talk about Salud Amigo Fest. Talk about other opportunities that someone could do to get involved with that as well.
Yeah, I think everyone can start their own agave journey just by buying any kind of tequila or Mexican spirit. Preferably something that's small batch or artisanal or from small producers. How you can find that? Just go to a simple website. Tequila Match is a great source. Or maybe your personal pages, your page, right? And you can start with the mezcal that you know. Just supporting those small brands, it's going to help you understand a little bit more about the heritage, how they do it. But then you also contributing back home, right? Yeah. That's one way. Second, I'll say quick plug-in, come to the club, right? We get to taste amazing brands. You get to meet the owners, the master distillers, and also be part of a community that wants to keep learning. It's really respectful people there as well. They're willing to teach you what they've learned in the past, and also just kind of keep going with you, right? And then last one, I'll say, go to the festival.
No, hay otra. Primero. Go to the town. Go to the distillery. You can actually go to their website, cascanes.com, I believe, and you can actually schedule a tour. There's also, I would say, we don't publicize this, but we help people book tours privately all the time. Like, you don't need to come to our LA Tequila Club tours for us to want to help you. Go. I think when every time we tell people, you start the journey within our tastings, and then what's the next step? Go to Tequila, go to Guadalajara, go visit, go to the distillery, go see it with your own eyes. Plus, like, God knows how much longer you'll get to meet Jose one-on-one in the distillery, right? One of the owners, and he's such a key part of the story and how the story is told and the experience of the distillery. So I really, really encourage everybody to just go and meet Don Chico and meet the people, and we're always happy to guide you to get there, to help you get there. But yeah, then come to Salud Amigos, for sure.
I love that. Tell us about Salud Amigos.
Yeah, so this is a new venture that I'm trying to do with other business partners. I've been working or helping other festivals just by one, marketing, to bringing brands, three, providing new experiences for people to keep learning, right? So this year, the opportunity just came in. I was going to say I'm going to take it. So we're launching this Salud Amigos Fest. This is going to be the first edition. And basically, the whole purpose of this festival, yes, it's going to be another typical festival in the sense that there's going to be tasting, but we also incorporating a lot of education. As you know, our foundation has always been education, but then also the accessibility or the approachness that you can have with all these maestros tequileros that we're inviting. In that sense that you can have a one-on-one conversation with them. You can ask them anything about what you want to learn. They're also going to be talking about specific topics they're passionate for in the industry, or just get your bottle signed in some way. But then besides that, there's going to be a gastronomy concept to it. One of the things that we really enjoy is doing pairings with tequila or any Mexican spirit. And that's a perception that we want to remove from people, right? If you go to a fancy restaurant, you can always do a pairing with wine and whiskey. But tequila, having more than 600 aromas and flavors, it's even more complex and even easier to pair with all these different cuisines. One of our favorite pairings is tequila and sushi in Japanese food. Who could imagine you can do that? But it's one of the things that we really enjoy, and we actually offer an experience like that too. But basically, that's another concept. And then we're adding a technology concept to it, where we are introducing an extended reality show where basically you as a participant will be able to have a virtual tour through this massive theater studio style screen that you can actually feel like you're walking through the distillery. So that's
Now, the immersive part I saw. Okay, cool.
And we have more. So people that maybe have never got the opportunity to go to Mexico or just go to these towns, now they have the opportunity to see that on a big screen, right? But then part of that immersion is going to be an aromatic component, a tasting to the end, and that really help to motivate you to go in person eventually, right? And then the last component, it's a lot of those educational aspects we're going to be incorporating. It's maybe having we're having a different sections where you can do a pairing with chocolates. You can do a tasting of water, because water is a big factor on the flavor profile. You can have a blind tasting of different tequilas that we're going to have there. So there's going to be a lot of different sections there that we're going to either challenge you or educate you about different concepts, not just only having a typical tasting, it's amazing, but we're going to push that boundary to you keep learning. And hopefully that experience you can share with other people so they can come next year. And you want to come next year and try more stuff. So that's a lot of the behind the scenes that we're working on. But definitely we want that immersive experience to be something that you're going to keep talking even after the event.
Fantastic.
I don't know, maybe we bring Osto to LA.
Surprise, guys, maybe. That's awesome.
But then in also providing these benefits to the brands that are participating, we also have hosted the Industry Mixer, which is basically an event before the festival where these brands get to know other brands. But not only that, besides industry people like bartenders, importers, distributors, liquor store owners, or just bar managers that are eager to get to know new brands, new people that they can work with. And this is basically what we've done in the last years, just incorporating that business aspect and benefits to the brands that we're working with.
Yeah, one of the things that we noticed was that when we go to festivals, the brands and those that are in the business didn't get an opportunity to meet because they're working the event. They can't leave their booth. And we wanted to facilitate that opportunity to get to meet themselves, to each other, regardless of where you are. But also, we invite bartenders, restaurants, folks that are local that should taste, who should also have the opportunity that may not be able to attend the event either because it's typically on the weekends. And a lot of the industry folks work on the weekends. And so it's to give that opportunity that maybe some folks are missing and then also activate and facilitate business conversations or anything that could benefit the brands. We're going to do it the night before, which would be May 2nd. And still working out the details. But we really invite folks to mark it on their calendars. And also let us know if you want to be part of the industry mixer. This year, one of the areas that we're trying to focus on is to bring more tools to the industry mixers. Before, it's been essentially sharing what everybody either sells or produces and that sort of dynamic. But this time we want to make it a little bit more structured, facilitate some workshops, and in the areas that we've gotten requests where people want to learn more, whether that is social media, marketing, sales. And so we are exploring who and how we are going to execute that portion. But we're very excited to bring in that addition into industry mixers this year.
Well, I think that's fantastic. I think we had some great tasting today that you helped provide. And I love to learn about what you guys have been doing, how it all came about, and really the core, as you mentioned, the pillar and the mission of education and sharing. That's one of the most important things on my journey that I've done as well. Is I love to learn, but I love to share. What's the point of learning something if you're not going to proliferate it and share with others? So I think that's one of the things that has gravitated me towards you guys as well in the programs that you're doing. So it's fantastic. I feel very honored to have you as guests on the show. And I think we're close to a wrap. If there's anything that you guys would like to share or think we've missed that you want to tell people, right now is a great opportunity. Camera.
I think what's really important to grasp about LA Tequila Club is that the LA Tequila Club is as alive until the community wants it to be, right? It is a community. It's what you bring to the club. It's what I learned from you. Pepe and I are just doing the work behind the scenes, but it is all about what you bring and what you want to contribute. So if folks have ideas, whatever they want to learn, whatever they want to see, this expansion to Mexican distillates, right, came from suggestions. The tapping into different festivals and different programs and approaching education in different ways has come from all feedback and the trust that we have within our members. So we really encourage people to share what they want to learn about. Our focus will always be tequila and agave, right, first and foremost, but we are willing to bring any experience. I think by now you know that I can really just take any puzzle and build it into something magical. So yeah, if people
maybe we can have you do a mezcal education section at one of the events.
I would love to.
That's another thing that we're trying to do. It's not putting people in the spotlight, but encouraging people to teach others about what they're passionate for. We know you're passionate about mezcal, so I'm gonna throw you in there that maybe you talk about mezcal at one of the sessions or events, and then like that people get to learn from you as well.
That'd be fantastic. Any way that I could contribute or be involved with you guys, I think it's a no-brainer. You could count on me, count on us. Jack back there too has some great ideas. We've been talking and we're excited to just keep propelling forward in the industry. So again, thank you guys for being on. I appreciate it because we've been talking for a while, and so anytime we could get together and discuss things like this is fantastic. So I learned a lot today. I hope if you're watching, you learned a lot, and if you have other questions, please leave them in the comments. You can reach out to LA Tequila Club, Alejandra and Pepe. What's the best way to reach you guys?
Instagram. LA Tequila Club.
Cool.
Easy.
Right on. Again, thank you guys. Salud.
Saludcita, chicos.
Salud, amigos.
Salud, amigos.
Thank you. And as always, thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next time.